Welcome everybody. We're in the Gallery of Guitar today and there's lots of things to celebrate. One is that I'm getting to hang out with one of my favourite people, Michael Ritchie.
Hi Matthew, thanks for having me.
It's more
nice to see you again, it's been a while.
It's been a while with things like pandemic and you moving to the furthest northerly point of the country that we live in. But for many of you, you'll know that Michael builds the guitars that I play, and if you have seen many of the hundreds upon hundreds of videos from here, from the Gallery Guitar and on the YouTube channel, it's a Michael Ritchie guitar that I'm playing, and his guitars have gone all over the world, and we've been talking today and last night about all things guitar making, and we're also celebrating the fact that this is indeed the 1000th video on the Gallery Guitar.
Well done.
Yeah, well, it's great to be able to celebrate it with you, and we are absolutely surrounded by guitars today. Everywhere we look there are beautiful instruments, and Michael's brought some of his most latest creations down and we're going to talk about them. I'm going to play them a little bit today. I'm going to ask him all sorts of questions about guitar making and his background and his history with making these beautiful things. I mean, creating musical instruments, it's just probably one of the most special things you can do.
Well, it's a lovely thing to do, and it's especially lovely to hear them played.
Yeah, well, I mean, when they come to life, that must be a magic moment.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Oh, good. Well, I'm holding my phone as well because some of the patrons of the Gallery Guitar have put in some questions, so we'll get to those a little bit later on, and I will put my phone down actually and probably pick up a guitar at some point. But just so people know, could you tell us a little bit, Michael, about how you got into this craft of making guitars?
Yeah, if I could go back to the first time I came across the guitar, I was thinking about this in preparation for our little chat, and I think it was one of the Paco Peña, Paco de Lucia on Blue Peter.
Blue Peter, the TV program.
Yeah, and we would be talking. I don't know what age I was, maybe 8 or 9 or something, and it stuck with me. I wasn't really sure what I was seeing. As in flamenco, I was like, there's somebody playing a musical instrument. But I had no real sort of musical influences in my family, so it was quite a unique thing for me, and it stuck with me. And then a friend of my mum's gave her a guitar, and it was an old, I don't know if you remember the Barnes and Mullen B&M guitars.
I loved it.
I loved that guitar. She actually got the guitar.
B&M España.
Yes, that's right. Made in Spain. So and it had the Troubadour flamenco guitarist on the label. So I was quite like. It was meant to go to the primary school that my mum worked in, and I just held on to it. And I didn't know what to do with it, how to tune it, anything. I just loved it and started to learn.
I remember going with my dad to a music shop in Kirkcaldy to get a Barnes and Mullen's guitar, and choosing it and trying it, not knowing that probably they all kind of sound quite similar later on down the line, but it was they were great guitars.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think they were. Yeah. And interestingly, I can't remember what happened to that guitar, but I lost it or parted ways with it, and then was given another one. When I was a little bit older, so I was like, something was telling me to look more into this guitar. And I always loved when it comes to guitar, I quickly graduated from that guitar to an electric guitar. Being like 12, I was like, right, let's get the electric guitar going. Yeah. But the nylon string always stuck with me more than the electric or the
That's
steel
interesting.
string.
I think most guitar players or guitar enthusiasts, when you're about that early teens, you have to go to electric guitar for some time.
It's just a thing you've got to do.
It also makes it very often classical guitarists, when they form the idea that they're going to stick with the classical guitar, they become quite eclectic musicians because they've had that experience of alternative types of music to classical music, which is so important.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So the flamenco sounds they aired on Blue Peter, for people that don't know, everybody in the UK will be like, Blue Peter, we know. But anybody watching this, anywhere outside the UK might be like, what is this Blue Peter? It's like a kids' TV programme, but it's amazing, and every week they sort of delve into, could be something about gardening, could be something about history, could be something about music, like it was for you. You used to try and get a Blue Peter badge.
I never got one.
My daughter got one, Martha got one.
Is it still a thing?
It's still a thing. She got one recently for planting plants and bringing on tomatoes in the garden and picking up littering and stuff, and so they still do it, because I never got one and I was raging. So, but it was flamenco guitar then. It was more of a flamenco sound that got you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure. I think it was Paco Peña.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, at that time, I didn't know.
It was probably Paco Peña.
I think it was. I was just quite taken with it, and I remember it to this day. And so that was the thing that stuck in my mind. And so when this guitar appeared in the house, I was like, oh, that's one of those things. And it sort of evolved from there. How I got into making them, it's hard to say exactly, but when I got that guitar, I loved the idea of, I was always looking inside it, and I mean, they were quite crude plywood guitars, and they'd no heel. It was it was just, I don't know if it was even bolted on or what, but I was just taken with the instrument.
So you were then investigating how the instrument was put together.
And
the next phase.
And as I got older, as I got into my teens, I had this secret ambition. I did have this secret dream that I wanted to move to Spain and learn to make guitars in the mountains. I mean, I didn't even know if Spain had mountains particularly, And then I came across the course at now Clyde College, then Annisland College
in Glasgow here.
Stringed instrument repair and construction. I think it was called at the time, and I thought, well, I'm gonna give that a go. It might not be the mountains of Spain, but it's along the road, and it's a start, And so that was. I just loved it from the minute I started. I had no woodworking experience apart from maybe in my grandpa's shed or something. Playing with stuff, but I didn't do woodwork at school. Past the basic thing that you do. And
so that's where you learned actually, using the tools and the basics of construction.
I mean, they were really rigorous in the sort of foundations, learning to sharpen the tools and squaring up bits of wood. It was so. I mean, it was quite hard. I was telling you last night, we had to fit violin bridges, cello bridges. I mean, that is a job in itself. That's an art in itself. So it was hard. So it was stringed instrument building. It wasn't just guitar. You were learning all of these. Methods. Well, they went into the repair of the bowed instruments. And you could then choose to go one way or the other. The idea of that course was that it fed into the course in London. So you went, you could do as much as an HNC there, and then moved to an HND and on to degree. It was London Guildhall at the time. I think it's the Metropolitan now. I don't know what's changing their names. But, so that's what I did.
And then you went to Spain though. So you also after this time learning the basics is probably too simplistic a way to put it. But
I think
that woodwork, and you then moved to Spain, and that's where. Because obviously we know this guitar channel, we talk about all sorts of different types of guitars. If I said you were a traditionalist in terms of how you approach building a guitar, you're using those traditional Spanish methods, and you're interested in that. That's where your heart lies. So
absolutely. And it's not to say that's the way you have to make guitars. It's such an open, rich thing just now, guitar making, and there's lots of different ways of doing it, so that's great, but I personally like the results of the traditional methods. And that goes a little, the traditional guitar from a guitar making point of view is often the integral heel, this heel is also continues inside the guitar, and that's how the soundboard and the sides and the back attach to it, rather than the steel string has got it's the neck's dovetailed on. So there's that, and then there's fan braces. And that tends to be, if you do that, it's a traditional Spanish guitar. There's more to it if you get right into it. When I moved to Spain, I learned how to use hot hide glue, and with that comes certain methods of construction that you have to do, because the glue, when the glue goes cold, it no longer works.
So you're keeping
you have to
workshop warm.
Well, you have to keep the workshop warm. You have to warm the parts you're gluing. You have to heat them afterwards, like the video we did with me with the flame on the glue joint. So I was learning all these little tricks that enabled me to use hot hide glue, because before going to Spain, using hot hide glue for the construction of a guitar was difficult because it's such thin plates of wood, and the water content causes the distortion in the wood and it causes it to flip inside out and all sorts of things. You know, so you're just like, straight to the PVA.
Yeah, because it's more consistent or a more sort of
it's a little bit easier to work with. But once I learned these little tricks, it was a joy, you know, and it made so much more sense.
There's something in that
construction point of view.
I guess I'm jumping around, but like from a player's perspective, you know, there's a consistency, for example, with false nails or fake nails, as they get called, and it can give you that consistency of sound on every string. And they're getting so good now that, like, you know, I think I could still tell, but you know, it's a pleasing sound, let's say. But then actually, when you think about your individual nails, every finger's different, every nail's different, so there's an interest in that sound.
Right.
It's a bit more complex and it's a bit more difficult to work with, and it's not as consistent. But it's once you get into that and you realise all the things you can do to modify the sound and vary the sound, you realise I want to go down that route. Like I would have always thought that as a player, I'd be like, well, I want to explore the sound as far as I can go, and it sounds a little bit like using the hot high clay, using those old traditional techniques is so interesting. I mean, obviously, probably hit and miss when you're starting out learning these things, you know.
Well, I mean, I jumped in and just sort of grabbed the bull by the horns, really, and it works really well. I mean, one of the things about hot hide glue for the luthiers out there, it doesn't lie.
Yeah.
So if you join a top with hot hide glue and then a few hours later you unclamp it, and you haven't joined it, or the join's not good or something's not quite right, it clicks open again.
Okay. Yeah.
So you know, whereas the modern glues that might sit there, you know, for 20, 30 years or who knows what might happen, you know. So I think you know where you are a little bit, you know. So I quite like that aspect of it as well. And there's something poetic about the methods to me.
Yeah.
You know, you're using the fire, and instead of heavy clamps, it's often bits of wood, string and a wedge to tighten the string onto whatever you're clamping. So, without getting too into the luthery side of it, but it's a joy. It adds joy to the work. So.
Well, this is it. Even the approach to that. I mean, I keep going back to sound because I guess when I'm trying a guitar, it's interesting. When I'm trying a guitar, it's sound really and feel and playability. And I guess the aesthetic of how the instrument looks and how the instrument, you know, is put together, the whole package, comes secondary for me. I know some people flip the other way. It wants to look a certain way, and that's what they're most attracted to, and then the sound comes after. But I'm absolutely kind of obsessed with the rosettes. I mean, like we've got quite a few different guitars here today, and all the rosettes are really, really different looking. You know, what's your idea on the aesthetic of the rosette? I mean, comparing these two that are here, they're very different.
Yeah, I just like playing with the geometric patterns. Triangles and the space around the square. And you know, there's
but that wouldn't be considered traditional. Really?
Well, no, not so much. I mean, there used to be the mosaic tile that they would do, which is, you know, it's lots of little tiny squares made into a log, and then you cut the tile. And I do that the same, except it's just a bigger pattern. You know? And I use solid wood rather than veneer. You get a bit technical.
No, it's interesting. It's interesting. Yeah. It's just because I'm thinking, like, there's so many traditional older techniques used in the construction of the guitar, but then the aesthetic can look quite contemporary, which is interesting. You know, sometimes it's how something's presented. You know, because people have a lot of opinions about things. There's so many things in guitar now with, you know, guitar construction. Like you say, it's a very, I don't know what, for want of a better word, it's a very fertile ground with double tops, carbon fibre.
Yeah, there's all sorts of ideas.
People are coming at this old tradition with all these new ideas. Sometimes I think the aesthetic that you have is quite contemporary, but the method is so rooted in the history. It's really interesting to me. It's like, so I can play a guitar at a concert and go, wow, is that a this and is that a that? And I'm like, take a closer look and think, oh, this is a really traditional guitar. But maybe the rosette gives out that.
Gives the impression, you know. Well, I mean, you know, for me, I just like playing with the wood. So, you know, what patterns can I make, and you know, how does that fit together.
Yeah.
I just sort of quite enjoy doing, I go into my workshop and just see what happens, kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's what's come out. I mean, there's very limited expression for the artist in making a guitar. You've got your headstock design, you've got the heel shape perhaps, and the rosette, and the rest of it's pretty set in stone. It's a guitar shape, and there's not really. I mean, they can vary, but
of course, you can't.
They still generally look.
You can't go too far away from a standard form. Yeah, but what about your shapes though? Because it's quite interesting. You have two.
I've got two shapes. This one I call the RE, which is Real Echo, after the barrio in Granada that I lived in at the time when I stayed there. And the other one is the ES, after Enrique Sanfeliu. He was a pupil of Garcia, Enrique Garcia. And I have an old Sanfeliu guitar,
nice.
so I just copied the
the shape. So but those two shapes mean something to you. So tell us about this time in Spain. Where were you staying? Where were you living? What was happening?
Well, in Granada, the Granada makers are spread across the city and into the foothills of the Sierra Nevada. A lot of them as well. So there's. They're quite spread about, but there is quite a concentration in the barrio called Real Echo. That's where Antonio Marin is.
Wonderful.
Rolf Eichinger was there. It was Rolf that showed me all these methods. He's sadly passed away now. John Ray's still there. And there's others. So I lived in that barrio. I lived in the same block as Rolf and John, and Rolf would just come round and say, "I'm going to glue braces now. Do you want to see?" And I would just go and stand and watch, and every day and then we'd go for lunch. And that's how it went for about 3 months, and then I just started making the. I was just working on whatever I was working on at the time. I would see what he did and then carry on with what I was doing and slowly incorporate what I saw into what I was doing. So I mean, it was great fun.
And then being present with a guitar maker, sort of I'm going to do this today. Do you want to come along and see? Did you? Obviously, those I mean, they're lessons really. They probably don't feel like lessons in the sense of like you're just in amongst it. You're kind of there. It's not like going and got 1 hour on braces or 1 hour on.
Well, no, that's right. It was like, right, what we're going to see today, and it was really eye opening, And Rolf was such a craftsman, such an incredible craftsman. He had it down to a T, and he did it. I don't think all the Granada makers use hot hide glue for every part of the guitar. I think they probably keep it for the bridge and the bracing of the soundboard, and just for ease. But he did it the traditional way. He did everything, and it was just a joy to watch. It was like he was so fluid with it, it was so natural. So that's what I aim for in my makeup.
Is that like so that there's kind of a timing to it? There's like a because we often, I mean, I think there's a lot of probably misconceptions about makers. It seems like obviously it's a very long process. It's there's a time involved in it. But sometimes whenever I visited you in a workshop, there's a momentum to it. There's a flow to it. There's a because you're working with this hot glue and the things have to be done in a certain timeline and it moves forward.
Yeah, well, one of the things Rolf was very adamant about was that you queued everything up that you were going to glue, so you didn't just do one job and then glue it. So he would have. And I typically have like 5 or 6 necks, sometimes more, tops ready to join, backs ready to join. So you've done all the joining and it's just the gluing now. So everything's sitting there, and then you get the fire on, get the heat up, get the glue on, and you're getting closer to the time you're going to glue, because it's a little bit like, I imagine it's a little bit like press and record for you. So when you come to glue, that's it.
That's it. It's set in stone now.
And so you get into a rhythm, a momentum.
And, of course. Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. Let's take a look at the guitars that you've brought down from your workshop.
Okay.
We've been playing them a little bit this morning just to sort of warm them up. So this one, tell me a little bit about what I've got here.
That's a standard ES concert guitar, European
Yeah.
spruce top with Indian rosewood back and side.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. For everybody watching on all the guitars, I'll do some close-ups so that you can see the woods up close, because they're absolutely gorgeous. So inside, fan braces.
Yep, 7 fan braces,
Yeah.
pretty, again, fairly standard.
Yeah, I mean immediately it's so lively, it's so open. It's really singing treble. And what I noticed about this one this morning was the sustain. It's just fantastic. I mean, I have to stop it really at some point, you know. And it's so well balanced. Sometimes wonder when you put the strings on a guitar for the first time, and how's it going to come out so even? But it's
Well, I mean, it's a funny time when you first string them, because they do sort of move about, push and pull a little bit. You know, there's a settling down period as the strings have to settle down as well. You know, as you're pulling them into their tension. The guitar's doing that as well. You know, so there's this sort of period, about half an hour, where it all sort of
But I was amazed by this one because
equalises.
It felt that this is very easy to play and quick. You know, I feel like it responds really fast, and I love the top E string. It's just got such colour in it.
Yeah.
Such a nice sound.
That was one of Rolf's claims, that these methods gave you more variation of colour, so you didn't have to move your right hand far to change the colour of the note of the tone.
Yeah, so just a slight adjustment of right hand positioning, you suddenly get quite a
You know, obviously if you go to the bridge it gets more trebly, but
more Monticello. Yeah,
I've never been totally sold on that being a hard fact. But I wonder if there's something.
No, but there's probably something in it. I mean, it's really expressive for such a new guitar to have so much just vitality and energy in the sound. It's amazing. I mean, that's, you know, I'd be playing that in a concert in a day easily. You know, that's the consistency. You know, you're talking about that consistency, but using the methods, it can be, you know, difficult to necessarily achieve that unless you were using these synthetic glues and all that kind of stuff. That is, you play that tomorrow. You know. Right, tell me about this one on your left.
Okay, so this is the third La Senorita, a series of 4 guitar, probably do 4. Yeah. The wood on this one is Sitka spruce on the soundboard, and Swiss pear back and sides. It's a strip of Indian in the middle.
Back of this is amazing.
The purfling line is Brazilian cedar, the same cedar we use for the neck, but it's got a slight quilt in it, so if you sort of move it in the light, you can see it reflect slightly differently. You can see it right there.
There's lots of natural light coming into this room,
Yeah.
so when
So
I do some close-ups with people.
It's nice to let the woods do the talking, you know, rather than
Yeah.
going over the top with designs and you know, decoration.
But this is obviously, it's Senorita. It's got a very feminine sort of approach to it as well. I mean, there's almost a coloration to that Swiss pear wood. It's going a little bit, not pink, well maybe a little.
Well,
I don't know.
this one's a little bit more orangey. The first one I did was very pink.
Okay.
It came about from David at DK Classical Guitars. He wanted a smaller guitar for a smaller hand, for a lady perhaps.
Okay, yeah. Or someone with I mean, I don't have very big hands. 64 can.
Yeah, so they were 640. This one is 650, but the first 2 I did were 640.
Okay.
Because they were largely for David, commissioned by him. And I just sort of explored the feminine idea of the guitar. That was the thing.
Well, also in sort of so much of the 19th century guitar repertoire, the salon idea, the parlor idea, like, you know, the ladies of high society entertaining guests at the weekend with Fernando Sor being their guitar teacher. What a great time.
Well, I like that you see these guitars. They have the mother of pearl inlay. That was to put the pinky on a thing. Is that
nice. Yeah, I don't know. This is gorgeous.
I think it's also interesting to explore other woods. I've been, the standard wood is spruce or cedar on the soundboard, and Indian rosewood back and sides, or a rosewood back and sides. So the last couple of years I've been using other woods. I've been collecting over the years walnuts, poplar, Swiss pear, Australian blackwood. So I'm quite interested to hear the differences.
Well, this is very lyrical, and it's funny that people I had a thing when I was kind of growing up. Oh, the back and the sides don't affect the sound too much, it's all on the top, and obviously that makes sense. The top's the thing that's vibrating.
It's generally true, but it's not to discount completely the back and sides. I think.
But also, I think there's a thing that this provokes me to play a certain way. Now, we've been just talking about this femininity. We've been talking about the wood and that sort of stuff. But I saw a concert of the great Polish guitarist Marcin Dylla in Germany in the summer. At a festival, and he was playing, I think it was maple guitar, or it was a very light back and sides, and it suited that elegance, it suited that right hand, the sort of way he plays, and it's, I see certain people playing certain guitars, and then you think you choose that repertoire, you choose that way of approaching the instrument, because it's all part of the same thing, it's all leading you down that same road of expressing something. I think if you play a big, I don't mean supposedly loud in a sort of controversial way, because I think the guitar's inherently a quiet instrument. We were talking. We had a few glasses of wine last night. We were talking about all sorts of stuff about guitars, and because we're obsessed. But we were talking about this idea in guitar making of loud guitars, and I've never been able to wrap my head around it, because guitars are just quiet. They're just quiet. You can usually have a conversation over the top of a guitar, and I've been in rooms with guitars that are supposedly very loud guitars, and sometimes that sound doesn't travel as far as other older guitars.
I think that's right.
And it's fascinating. And it's not to say bad or good. It's just to say that sometimes when you're younger as well, and the provocation that the instrument gives you, it provokes you to feel, oh, I'm going to play that kind of repertoire because this guitar's giving me that feedback, and this is a very elegant sound, but it's not in any way it's thick, it's not robust, it's dark, it's got that singing treble. It's gorgeous, but I find these kind of debates and these things about loudness in guitar really fascinating, because it's just you're talking about, or I was saying, in that parlour, that salon. Like I sometimes feel guitar's best enjoyed. Even in a room not much bigger than this, with just 25, 30 people.
I think so.
The players
are sort of realistic. Even these modern canons. How you were saying that was the word attributed to it.
I just can't believe that.
I don't generally feel that they offer you much more.
They don't.
From the audience point of view.
Yeah, and I also know they don't, because I've even done some tests. I've even had some very loud guitars in my possession with other guitars, and I've recorded them, same pieces, same attack. And just looked at the waveform, looked at the amount of information that's there. And it's really fascinating. It's also the language, the language used around guitars. Canon is this. Some really, really important people have used this word, and I've kind of gone. For me, the word canon and a musical instrument couldn't be
further away.
Polar.
That's right.
I mean, it's like you've built these things, and then today we're like making them come to life, and we're creating music with them.
They're beautiful objects that
not instruments
cannons are not.
And I don't really understand, and it seems to be some sort of, I don't know why that's evolved, but it's all smoke and mirrors to me. I just like it's a guitar. It is an intimate instrument. It's an instrument which is capable of generating so many different timbres of sound, and that's kind of what I kind of enjoy the most. Is that you were saying that some of these techniques help change colour so quickly and without huge movements to do so. That to me is very interesting. That's gorgeous.
It's very rich.
Yeah, I love it. Excellent. Okay, so that's a very and then this one here. Tell us a little bit about the third.
Well, that
it's like Christmas in this house today.
Well, you'll notice the date on the label is 2014.
Okay.
So this is a workshop model. So that's a slightly cheaper model, it's cheaper because I didn't assemble it. I didn't construct it. This one was constructed by Mark Burnett, who's a young maker in his own right now, out in the East Linton, I think he is.
Oh, okay.
Which is North Baric, more or less. And so he came into the workshop, once a week, I think, once or twice a week, and basically told him what to do, and he did it, And so this is the result. So I've done that 3 times with
that's a nice idea.
Brazilian friend Sandro Uri and French girl Lucy Tuqua.
They've come and been almost apprentices in the workshop.
Yeah, well, Lucy and Sandro came at the same time, so there was the 3 of us in that. You remember the workshop in Finchley? There was the 3 of us in there making guitars. It was great fun. Yeah, it was really good too. Lucy's guitar ended up in Japan.
Wow.
And Sandro's, I think, is in Scotland, certainly the UK.
Yeah, amazing.
And this one never, Mark didn't quite get it finished. He went to study in Poors. There's a guitar making school in Belgium. And so he never got it finished, and I never had the time to finish it for him until now. So nearly 10 years later,
the guitar's finished. Yeah, that's amazing. That's great.
And it's also a chance for me to experiment a little bit. So this has got a 3-piece top rather than 2 matched pieces. It's 2 matched pieces on the outside and a strip in the middle.
Okay.
So that was taking the best of the spruce, the stiffest parts of the 3 pieces. So.
Well, it's instantly very playable. It's great. Wow. Stereo pair of microphones in front of us. There's nothing on it. There's no EQ, there's no reverb. It's just literally the sound of the guitars. Yeah. This morning, on a fairly chilly morning in Scotland, in November, I know October still. So yeah, but this is very interesting. Being started in 2014. That's amazing.
Well, I used it for a little while to practice other finishes, to trial other materials for varnishing.
So open.
But in the end, I just stripped it clean and French polished it.
Yeah, it sounds great. I've played a few guitars. There was a Rubio PF. Which was a David Rubio guitar.
I'd love to see
Paul Fisher.
Ah, yes.
So it was Paul Fisher having been in the workshop of David Rubio and producing a guitar. Yeah. So it looked, I had Rubio and in PF, like Uros Workshop on the model. So that was, I guess, the idea there was, someone's in the workshop and they're using your woods and your experience and they're putting it together. So I'm going to open up my wonderful questions that came in on
I'll try and answer them,
chat. Yeah, I know, because it's I said I was going to interview you, and people. I mean, they were so technical that you're going to get put, here. I mean, this one isn't technical. I don't think this is really interesting, but this is a man in the US who plays one of your guitars, Randall, and hello, Randall.
Hi, Randall.
Who's a great supporter of the Gallery Guitar and has a beautiful guitar of yours. And he says this interview promises to be one of my favourites. Well, I hope we're doing that justice.
Yes, I hope so, Randall.
The guitar that Michael built for me is the highlight of my day.
Oh.
And I'm curious about his builds in progress. Obviously, we've got 3 here now, they've finished. But especially the oud that's on your blog, on your website.
Yes.
The oud, you're building an oud.
Yeah, I started building an oud this year. The first half of this year, I didn't do much other than I did a lot of rejigging in my workshop. A lot, not so much making, more that organising the workshop to function better.
Okay.
And I started making an oud. Now, for a long time, I've wanted to make an oud. I'm not sure why particularly, other than I quite like the sound of the oud.
Yeah.
And it is the guitar and the oud are linked. You see quite a lot of crossover with the oud and flamenco, or oud music and flamenco music together. And there's not a lot of information out there on how to build an oud. I found one book by a guy, I forget his first name, I think his second name's Sharkey. I might have that wrong, apologies if I do. And he's basically just taken an oud apart and worked it out from there as far as I can see, and it's very, very helpful. So it's a little bit different to the guitar. There's obviously similarities, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So I have to say I've started it and I'm not much further on. I've got the back started with the strips. It's all thin strips that meet each other in points at the two ends.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm going to get back to it.
Yeah, no, it looks fascinating. I mean, one of the first gigs I ever got after sort of graduating, like one of the most first professional, let's say, concerts, was in Turkey. And everyone was playing sass, and I was taken to a sass maker.
Oh yes,
and it was really incredible.
Yeah, it's the long thin neck and the bowl,
extremely thin neck and the bowl, and it was really being in his workshop and seeing what this man was doing
with quarter tones and a mixture of whole tones.
Yeah, really, really incredible, and the players were like phenomenal, like virtuosos. So and then the oud, but then what's next making wise? Obviously you've got these 3 guitars that are probably going to go to various homes, I'm sure, soon enough. But
well, I've just finished these, so the next guitars I've got a variety of tops. I meant to take a video of them actually. I could send a video. Yeah. If you wanted to add it in, I've got various tops ready for bracing, backs ready for bracing, sides ready for bending, and necks at the point where I can start carving them and whatever. So yeah, that's the.
So fairly soon you'll be having guitars.
I'll be assembling guitars again, probably by the end of the year.
Okay. Well, there's some others. Michael Nevereski has another one of your guitars actually, and he was just saying his overall techniques are fascinating to see, because there's some videos that I made with Michael quite a few years ago now where we're filming you, like igniting the
joining a top and
with flame.
That's what we were talking about earlier. So reheating the glue.
So they're on the gallery for people to check out these methods that we've been talking about. And Michael's talking about Michael here is talking about that. He says his Ritchie guitars Cedar and Rosewood. The Plantia is compact and nestles easily in his lap, making for a really intimate playing experience. It's a joy and inspiration. And it's really sweet. I'm grateful for builders like Michael, for whom I'm sure building is part of a labour of love. We players benefit immensely from the skill and knowledge and devotion to tradition a builder like Michael brings to the craft of luthiery, which is so nice to hear. And then he has a question which is great. When he had his guitar, he got it set up in Boston. I think he got it second hand, and the maker that noticed something he said about the saddle. It doesn't rise higher above the bridge on the bass side compared to the treble side, and his other guitars do this, and he supposed it was to accommodate the way the low E string vibrates. It seems that what Michael did to achieve this was to make an adjustment or an accommodation on the fingerboard.
Yes.
But he's saying I can't describe it better than that, so maybe it's something you can speak to.
Well, it's absolutely correct. He's described it perfectly. So, well, it's just, instead of instead of lowering the treble here or raising the bass to get the action you want, you remove material from this part of the fingerboard.
Okay. Yeah.
And sometimes from here, by removing material from the treble nut end, that gives you a lower action on the treble string at the 12th fret. So it gives you a nice even saddle here, which gives you an even break angle.
Yeah.
If I was to lower the treble, you start to lose the treble break angle. So it gives you this same break angle where the string comes over the saddle, and it's all achieved in the fingerboard. And that's the way the Spanish did it.
Yeah. Okay. So that is amazing. So, and then there's another bit to it, which is. I see Michael as a traditionalist. Is that fair?
I think so.
Yeah. I wonder what his thoughts are, and this is very technical, so here we go, folks. I wonder what his thoughts are about the use of frequency generators and the analysis of, is it Chladni patterns as tools for building it. I mean, maybe you can. I mean, Michael Nevereski says, it's a mystery to me how guitar makers achieve the results. I've heard that the saying that a sculptor removes everything from his block of material that doesn't look like his subject, but guitar builders also add braces and in the service of securing that sound that they've got in their mind. So what's this? Well,
that's plate vibration. So there's a whole study of plate vibration. So if you get a plate, like a soundboard, but I mean it can be any sheet material is going to give you vibration. You put a signal generator over it, and say you sprinkle tea leaves on it. It'll start to vibrate. Yeah. So in the low frequency, you'll get the big pattern where most of the plate's moving, and then as it rises up, it starts to localize into smaller pockets of vibration. So that shows you how plates vibrate
and how the top is moving and activating.
I mean, I've done a lot of that. I did a lot of that when I was younger.
Sort of experimenting with building.
Yeah, or trying to learn something, but I was never really sure what it was telling me. It was telling me how plates vibrate, but that doesn't seem to change that much, really. So I don't do it anymore. I don't. I never felt as if you could show me one plate vibrating. One pattern, and then this is another pattern. They're going to be very similar because it's the same frequency and the plate's the same thickness and material. There might be a slight difference, and could you tell me that one is going to make a better guitar than that one? I'm not sure you can.
No, exactly.
So for me, when he's asking about how luthiers achieve it, for me it's about stiffness of the top, the lateral stiffness in particular. So I want the top to feel as stiff as I can get it, as thin as I can get it. Obviously not too thin, but you take the thickness of the soundboard down, and then you check it, and you've still got the stiffness. Right, I'm going to take it a little bit more. You've still got the stiffness. So it's finding that balance. Before you glue the braces. And then the braces are just adding.
And so much of that must come from experience and working with the wood and experimenting and knowing what works and knowing what doesn't.
Well, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, it hasn't happened for a while, but cedar's a funny wood in that respect, because you can just take. I'm just going to take another little bit off. I mean, we're in tenths of millimetre here, so we're 2.5 millimetre. I'm just going to take that down to 2.4 and. It just goes floppy. There's no warning.
It's just.
You're just like,
Next. Oh my god.
So that happens. You see, with cedar, it has to be absolutely on the quarter, or there is a greater risk of that happening.
Amazing. So we wouldn't know that. I mean, some players are very invested in. I mean, some players have even made their own guitars. That's happened. They've gone on courses and stuff like that. I mean, I think that. The relationship we have, where I'm constantly playing your instruments when you bring them, and we're talking about it, and I'm sort of saying this is doing that, this is doing this. That's probably quite useful to you as well.
Of course.
In terms of research.
Absolutely, it's invaluable. because I spend a lot of my time with my own thoughts in a workshop making guitars, you know, and so you wonder if you're losing touch with the wider world sometimes, you know. So coming down here and hearing you play them and put them through their paces is fantastic. Absolutely.
Well, we're going to spend the rest of the day probably doing that as well, and a few people are going to come by as well and drop by and play a little bit.
Great.
But we just wanted to share a little bit of what we were up to today, and I hope you've enjoyed listening to the guitars a little bit as well, and thank you very much, Michael, for sharing some of your
You're welcome.
thoughts.
Thanks for having us.
It's an absolute pleasure. We'll see you again soon.